What's up, everybody? I'm back again. Little trade review. Told you guys I'm going to try to do more of these, so got a quick little free time. This one's going to be short, short and sweet. I haven't gone over the gap fill in a while. We had a perfect example of this on Spaces the other day. Made a post about it, I think from the Wolf account actually, but I wanted to give a visual representation of this and kind of show you guys the data behind it for one, how to use it, and then there's a little twist on this data that you can use to kind of find some extra confluence. So I want to point that out, make a quick little educational video for you guys. I'm doing it as a live stream because I'm a free talker. If you guys have followed me, you know that's how I do my stuff. So instead of a scripted, recorded video, whatever, I just go live and start talking. And then of course you can always watch it back. If you're on X, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube as well because it is over there. It's live over there as well as all of my. If you go to the live section of my YouTube, you'll see a lot of these videos that I've done in the past, and it's one of my missions right now. One of my focus. How do I get more consistent, and better at doing these? So I'm gonna try to do that for everyone. Hope everyone's having a good evening. It's Wednesday night here. We're gonna talk about a trade from last Thursday. I wanted to do the video this weekend, but with the holiday and family, just didn't work out. So here I am. We're going to do it today. We're going to take a look at it. So gap fill. Let me switch this over here. Boom. Now this is big on the screen. This is Edgeful. So I usually stay on the what's in play is where I hang out on Edgeful if you're not familiar with it. But if you haven't tried out Edgeful yet, you've got to try it. At least give it a month. Look at the different data sets. Start trading with data in your favor, and watch how your confluence strengthens for all of your trades, and how I would say watch how often you're right when you have data that's backing your directional thesis or your trade setup. You'll you're trading with higher probabilities. You're going to be right more often. Super important, big piece of my trading strategy here. Anybody, if you are watching, if you jump in, if you're in the comments, let me know if you have a question, if you have something that you want me to go over. Might be able to get to it, but let's start out with the gap fill here. All right. This is the gap fill report. So if you go to your reports, I'm on SPY right here. We'll start out with SPY. Actually, no, we're going to start out with QQQ because that's going to be the sequence of this trade. So we'll start out with QQQ. You can choose report, just go to gap fill. I use 6 months of data, and this is just right now, just the standard gap fill. This tells you, whenever we gap up or down, this tells you how many times we've done each and how often or what percentage of the time we fill those gaps. The one that I use the most is the size. So if you see the standard right here by size. So this is huge because it's going to break down to how big the gap is. And you can see if I go to one of these bigger sizes, you can see the probabilities are very low that we fill those. Very, very low. As the gap gets smaller, you have a lot larger probability of filling these gaps. So here's kind of the process that I went through to set up this trade. Let me get over here. Let me get to QQQ. And where's last Thursday? Right here. Okay, let me zoom in here, and let me show you guys how this set up here. I think this was it. Yeah. So I was short because if you look at this, so what's the context that we're in here first? The first thing I'm looking at is context. Context is the downtrend, right? If you look back, obviously this thing, we pushed up here and then we started rolling over. So we're in a downtrend. We had a big down day, or the day before this trade, before this trading day, and we gapped up, right? So you see, this is kind of what some people call the session gap or the overnight gap. What this gap fill report is, just to make sure it's clear, this is based on previous day's close. So you see, like right here, previous day, the price closed here. And you can see down here is as high as we got. You can see the gaps highlighted and it's not filled. When it does fill, Edgeful highlights the indicator. It's the Edgeful gap fill indicator right here, highlights it for you. So let's zoom in and let's look at this. I saw the gap up And immediately coming into the open, I knew that we had a gap to fill right here. And look, it's 0.67%. All right, 0.67%. So I can go over here and say, okay, that falls in this category. It's a 50-50, right? 50-50 we fill, 50-50 we don't. That's not that strong of odds, all right? So I'm like, okay, maybe we fill it, maybe we don't. We are in a downtrend, but I had a feeling we would at least fill that gap. And honestly, when I was short, I didn't stop here at this gap. I looked for the full gap to fill because that's what the statistics are telling me. 50-50, okay, that's a decent stat. Now, here's where the kicker came in. And this is something that I found in the data. If I go from buy size to buy weekday, this was a Thursday, right? Look at this, 77% of the time. That's a strong stat. Now, what is this saying? This says on Thursdays, when we gap up, which is this category on the left here, gap ups on Thursday, and I've heard people say this a lot of times. I've heard people say, oh, it's gap fill Thursday. It's gap fill Thursday. Several people, a lot of my friends on Spaces, they say that gap fill Thursday, and I'm going, why? Why is it gap fill Thursday? Or what gaps are we talking about? Well, I pulled up this data one day and I said, hey, gap fill Thursday is actually a real thing and I can quantify it. I can actually put data behind it. So look, on Thursdays, we've had 77% of the time, if we gap up on a Thursday, we filled that. And if we gap down, that's also pretty strong. Now look where it changes. Look, if you gap up on a Wednesday, we haven't been filling those. Tuesday, closer to nothing. Basically closer to the middle on Mondays. Fridays, you gap up on a Friday, you rarely fill it. You hardly ever are going to fill this. 73% of the time, you gap up on a Friday, you're going to gap and go. So keep that in mind, on Friday. Thursday, for whatever reason, and Thursday's tomorrow, right? So keep this in mind. If we have a gap tomorrow, this gap is a the highest probability of the whole week to fill. So when I'm looking at that, I'm going, okay, 77% chance because it's Thursday, about a 50-50 just based on the size. But I also have confluence. The trend is down. We gapped up. And also, anybody that maybe longed down here, they're going to probably be taking profit if they held overnight. If they longed here and they for whatever reason held from here, when it opened up, maybe they took some profit. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm looking at. So here's how I set up this trade, right? I was trading NQ, which is basically the same as QQQ, but I'm looking at QQQ because it's basically the underlying, right? And I was shorting NQ because basically I see this downtrend. I think I had some levels of confluence on NQ up here in this area. So I got short right here, right at the open. I got short right around the open, and I was looking for the gap to fill. And we almost did it. And look, it took all the way until, even though it bounced back up here, as long as it kind of stayed under this pre-market low, I was going to stay in the trade. Well, this candle, and you can see it, it looks like, let me zoom in here a little bit further even. It's this candle, this wick right here is where we actually filled the gap. And look, as soon as we filled this gap, it's going to throw me around if I go to one. As soon as we filled this gap, we absolutely rocketed back up. Okay. Now, here's the other confluence piece that I had. So I shorted NQ here. I got out, and I was actually looking to short this again. And instead, I shorted it on ES. But why did I do that? Because I looked at SPY. I was watching both of these. I looked at SPY on the same day. Let me get back to Thursday. So SPY right here, Thursday, same scenario, right? We didn't fill the gap. Look, so the same time that QQQ filled the gap here and bounced, it was actually on this candle here. We had not filled this gap on SPY. Now look, let's set up. I might have made, okay. Here we go, right here. Okay, here is where the day opened. You see my 9:30 candle? You see where the day opened? And I can see down to here is my gap size, right? So smaller gap to fill on SPY, and it hadn't even filled yet. So 0.38%. Now, if I go back to my buy size report, which I look at every single day, okay, we gapped up. There's a 57% chance. So better than a coin flip odds that we're going to fill this gap on SPY. Now watch what happens when I go to buy weekday. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to switch this to SPY. 1 second. Boom. Let's go back to by size. All right, SPY. This size gap. There it is. I was about to say that did not sound right. 68%. So I know when I'm looking at QQQ and SPY to start this day, I know that there's a strong probability that SPY is going to fill this gap based on this size. It's 0.38%. It's $2 right now on SPY. And if I look at the odds, so I can measure that out. I can immediately go here and look at the odds and say, okay, we gapped up. There's a 68% chance that we're going to come down and fill this gap. So I could have shorted at any point here and said, hey, it doesn't matter kind of really what happens. So what I'm looking for is where can I get into a short that's not going to put me in a ton of drawdown up into here, where I can go for my target, which is down here when you can see this yellow line. And here, I'll even play this out right here. All right, so this is where my day is about to open. I go forward. All right, first candle, pause, boom. Okay, so as this day starts, right, you see my gap target right here. So that's going to highlight yellow when we reach there, and the candle is going to highlight orange. And the reason being is like, I want to know when that gap fills, because I don't want to long until that gap fills. Because even if I'm like, okay, downtrend, but even if I'm thinking I can play along there, maybe I will. But what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the size of that gap, which once again, I said was like 0.37, 0.38. So I know there's a 68% chance that that's going to fill. Now, here's the twist again. Remember what I told you, gap fill Thursdays. Okay, look, a gap up on Wednesday sucks on SPY. 64% of the time, we're not going to fill it. What about Thursdays? 93. This is one of the highest numbers I've seen. Gap fill Thursday. Look at this. Last 5 Thursdays that gapped up, we've filled every single one of those. Every single one of those. And look, if it's a gap down, it's not near as strong. But a gap up on SPY on Thursday. So if we gap up tomorrow, guess what I'm probably going to play? 93% of the time, we're going to fill the gap to the downside. If we gap up, we're going to go down and we're going to fill it. So I know I have 2 points of confluence. I have one that's telling me 68%, and I have another one that's telling me, hey, it's 93% that we're going to fill this gap. So here's the play out. So look, right here, you're going to see, right there, boom, oh, stop. This candle right here, this spot right here, I'm watching QQQ, and I see QQQ fill the gap. And I know, okay, QQQ filled the gap, it's probably going to bounce, right? As soon as that gap filled, QQQ is probably going to bounce some. That doesn't mean that it doesn't bounce and do this. Some days it bounces off the gap and does that, right? All I know is there's going to probably be a reaction when QQQ fills the gap. So that happens, and I see this pop back up, but I know, okay, hey, we're up here. We're even over the opening candle. We're back up here in this area. And I'm saying, okay, can I short, and maybe I use this area, this 530 area, as kind of my stop loss? But either way, I know 93% of the time this gap's going to fill because of the Thursday. 68% of the time this gap's going to fill based on the size of it. So I can take a short entry as this bounces here. I can take a short entry and scale into a short here. And sure enough, how do I make this go slower? Let's do that. Okay. So watch what happens as this plays out. There's a hanging man candle. There's upper wicks. I can get short. Okay, I'm in my short here. As we come down to this, I can start trimming. New low of day, new low of day. Boom, there's my gap fill. Now I can trim out and the stats play out. And look, I can trim out, and then, as low as you want to take it, right? Any of this is probably a good spot to take profit. And you see as it played out, then boom, look, once it played out, reclaimed, and look where we headed. And you can trade QQQ the same way. So if I go back to QQQ on the same thing here, right at the open, you're going to watch this play out again. Once again, let's hit play. So boom, gap hasn't filled yet, gap hasn't filled yet, hasn't filled yet. That wick down filled it. Okay, that's where you get out. Now look, you've bounced, you're getting these upper wicks. I'm seeing QQQ weak. I got in SPY, which SPY was stronger, right? But it had a stronger probability of filling the gap. And then look what happens here. So I could have reshorted in Q just the same. And or QQQ. You could take puts. If you trade SPY or QQQ, obviously you can trade puts, right? And sure enough, boom. This is where SPY filled the gap, like right in here on this candle. And then you see, okay, trade's over. So if you were looking to long this day, based on like maybe this reaction, and you're thinking, okay, I want to long, you got to wait for the gap to fill, and then you need some type of like confluence. So I'm seeing this confluence, like to me, this just doesn't look that good for a long, to be 100% honest. But the best trade setup of the day was playing the gap fill down, right? Let me stop this and get this back out. And then like a day like today, so here's today, this gap is way too big to fill based on probabilities, way too big of a gap to fill today. Where's my data? There we go. And look, you don't have to fill every single gap. Obviously, look, some of these gaps aren't filling right now. But with size, with confluence, look, these gaps all filled back here. This gap was a crazy gap that I didn't think would fill, and it ended up filling. And look, once you filled it, you got a nice reaction. This day was interesting too. Right here on QQQ. Look where you opened, right here. Your gap was very small. What day was this, Tuesday? Okay, so look, here's your gap fill. What does Tuesdays look like? This was the gap up. Not really strong stats there, but by size, 68% odds. Right? Oh, no, we need QQQ. Here I am on the wrong ticker again. Don't get the wrong ticker, that'll change it. All right, 57%. So yeah, maybe not really a strong stat there, but okay. So Tuesday, 59%. So more times than not super strong, but more times than not. And based on the size here, 57. So more times than not, you're going to fill this gap. And whenever we took off like this, I'm looking at this going, okay, I don't know if we're going to fill this gap or not, right? But we ended up filling it. And that's where those stats come into play. But that's the main thing I wanted to go over tonight was the gap fill, this little twist by weekday. If you hear somebody say gap fill Thursday, just know your stats are very, very strong. I wonder, can we find another example? What was last Thursday? Oh, here's one of the few times that we didn't fill. That was a big gap down. I don't think my gap fill indicator even goes back that far. Tomorrow, okay, so tomorrow, let's see, where did we close today? Right here. So we're set up for a gap fill tomorrow, actually. For now, depending what happens overnight, right? But your closing price is about right here. So if we open up here, guess what I'm looking for in the morning? I'm looking for this. Right there, boom. If we open up below, I don't know if I'm going to look for it because I really don't want to be below this. We lose these lows for today. We probably come back down here somewhere. All right, great question right here. How do I draw a gap? Okay, so if you sign up for Edgeful, which that's where you're going to get all this data from. I don't know anybody else that provides this type of data service. Edgeful's indicators are all included. So if I go to indicators here, look at all these indicators from Edgeful. All of these are included. All of these. Look at this. Boom. Every one of these, you'll get access to these. There's a lot of them. They add so many more all the time. Yeah. Wow. I didn't realize how many there were. There's more and more every time I go in here. There's more that I need to play around with. But yeah, how do you draw a gap? Okay, great question. Let's go back to that Thursday from the example. right here. All right, so let's say we're right here. Okay, so market's about to open. This is the last candle right before open, and I need to know where my gap's at. So what I can do pretty easily here. Let's see. Let's just do array. All right. So one thing that I would do is say, okay, here's the overnight session gap. But I also want to know where did price actually close the previous day? So where's the last candle? Here's the last candle right here. That last candle closed right there. So that's where my gap's going to be. So you can draw your own gap and just know the statistics are, I mean, you need to know what the statistics are before you play the gap, but boom, right there. And look, see, I drew that gap. There's the gap fill right there. But what I love about this indicator, as you can see here, let's go back. So what I love about this indicator, let me go forward and pause. Pause. Come on, give me one more candle. I don't know how to go forward candle by candle. Okay. So this blue area that shows up is kind of showing me, it's kind of outlining it. So it looks like, so the red is if it's above, it's blue if it's below. So right here, you see the blue, this blue area. So that's that blue area that it highlights that. And then the bar, it's gray where the full target is. And when that area fills in, that bar will turn yellow. So what you're seeing here is it playing out in real time or whatever in replay time. So you see the bars right here and you see that blue area. And if I hit play again, whenever it fills, the candle is going to turn orange. So I know my gap is filled and that bar. And the rest of the day, I use this bar because I want to know what's the previous day, what's the previous day's close. Because a lot of data that I use is based on whether we're going to close red or green. Reminder on Edgeful, I use this data a lot. So for example, I can go to what's in play from today and probably look real fast. Opening candle continuation is a big one I use. Previous day's range. So previous day's range, this basically tells you if you break the previous day's high, 67% of the time you're going to close green. If you break the previous day's low, 64% of the time you're going to close red. How can I easily see that throughout the day on the chart? It's the same indicator. I just use the same indicator. So I have previous day high and low on here. Let me turn this replay mode off. Where's so I have previous day high and low because I know if either one of these breaks, so like if this breaks up here, I know we should at least close above this. Let me see if I can find a quick example of this. Like right here, okay, maybe right here. This is the previous day's high. This green bar I have, this is another Edgeful indicator right here. If we break that at any point during the day, I know that we should close 67% of the time, more times than not, we should close above this area down here. Let's see if I can find one that. Let's see one that makes a really good example here. This was probably a good one here. Let's see, where did we close on Friday? We closed right here. All right, so this day, this day is really interesting because it broke the previous day high and low. But we broke the previous day's high. So just for the example here, broke the previous day high. So we should close above this line I just drew. And if you look, we did. Now the problem is this day we also broke previous day low. This is a wild day. So it's not the best example just on the fly here. I'm just trying to find a good, like this day we got so close to breaking previous day high and we didn't. I don't know if I have a good example here. Maybe trying to find you a good example on this. Boy, this volatility, this thing's been all over the place. I guess here's a good one. So since we're under previous day's low, which is this red bar, this little red line in between. So this line right here, this is previous day's low marked on my chart. So because of that, I know we should close below this. So even if we did fill this gap, I know we should close from here down. We should close below here because this previous day's low was broken. You break previous day's low, you should close. Here we go. Here's an example. This green line right here, this is previous day's high. So if you look back, previous day's high right here, boom. Because of that, since we were already above it, since we broke it, right? So since we're above, I know like the previous day's high has been broken. I mean, at the open, I mean, it opened up here, right? So I know as this comes down, and look, we filled this gap, which was crazy. Probably going to be a reaction point, but also I know we should close at least above here. So like, because we broke previous day's high, when we came down to this point, I can almost long here. Even if we came a little bit lower, like if we did this a little bit, I can still long with a target to close above here no matter what, right? And if you did that, obviously that worked out very nicely. So that's another piece there. Anybody else got any questions? I wanted to really cover that gap fill, especially gap fill Thursday. I should have titled this thing Gap Fill Thursday. Let me just show this again. All right, gap fill, bi-weekday. And how about gap doesn't fill on Wednesday? Gap up on a Wednesday, you're not filling it. Not often anyway. Gap fill Thursday. And then this was also, so the example I was kind of following here, because I took this trade twice, right? This, was it this day? Yeah. I basically took two trades here because like I was shorting at the open and QQQ happened to fill the gap first. I may have even shorted ES twice full times. I don't know. I remember I was short here, and when QQQ filled the gap, I covered out, and because I figured we would bounce and I'd be able to get back in. And I mean, this price action right here. I mean, if I'm looking at this price action, so I know this gap should fill because I've looked at the stats. So I know we should come down here, and I'm looking at this price action, and I see this hanging man candle, another hanging man candle. I mean, it gave you 3 chances on a 5-minute chart to get in, even really another chance here to get in. So you could have even got in here and trimmed, got back in, and wrote it down. I'll take a couple quick questions. My food's not here yet. What do I think about Tesla? Well, it's a tough question. Tesla, to me, I want to have exposure there and stay long Tesla. I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. So a lot of damage has been done on Tesla, obviously. You've come way down. You've held this 215 area, big area, all the way back. When you go back this way, big area here. You can go way back on this 215, actually. I mean, look here. I mean, this 215 is a big area all the way back. The problem I have with Tesla is right here. So here's my take on Tesla, right? I think you can trade this name, obviously. The thing is, it's kind of like this low here. But I think it's going to have trouble, especially if it gets up into this area. I think it's going to have trouble. If anything, maybe you get up to here, and I think you're going to have a lot of trouble. I think you're probably going to reject up in there if you do get back up into 320. You get to 320, 325. If you get up here to 350, you can draw this fib a couple ways. Yeah. Yeah, there's 320. You're half back of that move. The issue with Tesla for me, like sentiment can change pretty quickly. Tesla's at a crossroads. So Tesla's moving from an automotive company to a robotics and AI company. That's essentially what they're doing, and they're in the cycle of changing that over. We know robotaxi is coming in June in Austin. We know that there's big things planned, and it feels like they're very close to a breakthrough. I mean, I think I'm long-term bullish on Tesla. Short-term, I think it is going to be a painful trade. At any point, maybe sentiment could change and move back up quickly, and it probably will at some point. But I just think it's a really tough spot because the numbers aren't great right now, but you're not investing based on the numbers. You're not investing based on it being a car company anymore. You're looking at it being an AI and robotics company. So that's the hard spot. I like this question right here. How can I determine the odds of a gap fill bouncing? You know, part of that will just come with time and some awareness. Confluence is going to be the answer to a lot of things. If you have other levels, what is price action telling you? What direction is the market going in? A lot of those things will tell you a lot about the gap fill bounces. But when a gap fills, is it going to bounce? So like right here, I mean, you almost when a gap first fills, it almost always has a reaction because a lot of people. So think about it this way: when it, when I took that short trade, here's the example. So when I took this short trade, where was my target? Where was I exiting the majority of my position? At the gap fill, right? I'm targeting the gap fill. So when there's a lot of people that are targeting this gap fill here, the one that was left overnight, right? So when we get to right here, a lot of people are targeting that. That's why you, a lot of people that are, if you're short here, you're going to cover, right? You're going to buy. And if you're looking for this one, you're going to buy and you're going to get out. You basically reached full target. So if you're looking to take a shot long after a gap fills, you need some type of confluence. I mean, obviously these two look very different, right? Because when QQQ filled the gap, it bounced immediately, and then it came back down because SPY had not filled its gap yet. So that's how like you can almost use double confluence here, knowing that one gap filled, so one thing played out, the other one hasn't. So when QQQ played this out, SPY hadn't. I mean, one does it, the other one's probably going to do it, especially if they both have strong odds. But as far as it bouncing on a gap fill, I think you just have to look more into the overall picture of what's going on. So like if there's a gap to fill opposite of the direction that trend is going in. So like for me, like right here, I mean, we came off this low here, right? And then we had an up day here, and then we gapped up. So we're kind of in an uptrend. So that makes me think if we come back and back test this, fill the gap, back test yesterday's upper value, because you see, I mean, we spent most of the day grinding up here, and then we spent a lot of time building some value here, so a decent level here. So when we came down to that, which is the same spot you see, when we came down to that, then we bounced off of it, and the overall trend right here has been up, at least in the short term. I mean, obviously, yeah, it did this, but I don't know. So as far as like the actual gap fill stats, that's how I play it. I also, like you can see, I draw some gaps here on my chart. So like if you have a news gap, if you have some type of gap that's unfilled, I'll watch that. I mean, a lot of times, like just because it like this gap didn't fill, right? So like the data that I use is just based on the previous day's close. That's what the Edgeful data is. However, this gap, you see this gap right here was left, and then here's the actual gap spot. Look what happens once we turn around, once we get going here. As soon as we got over this, we were probably going to fill this gap, and you see we filled that gap in, even though it was a day or two later. Now look at this right here. So there's a gap that was not filled here yet. Now, let me just draw this. Look, if I put right here, where was this gap at? This gap was right here. This is based on the close from last Tuesday. And look what happened when we got up here to this gap. So zoom in. Look where this gap was. Look at that. So you don't just have to play the gap from one day to the next. That's the easiest way to determine the statistics of it. But look, this gap fills later. This is how many days later is this? A week? Yeah, a week later, we come back and we fill this gap. And look, even when we fill the gap then, oh no, what did I do? Wrong button. We still, we bounced off of it, right? And then look, Turned into resistance today. How about that? Interesting. Anybody else got any questions before I log off here for the night? Guys, make sure you check out Edgeful. If you haven't tried Edgeful, give it a month. There's so much data on here. I mean, I sit here, I've built a screener that tells me a lot of things. This is an easy sentiment check for the day. So I can go in here, and when it's live, it looks a lot different, but let's see. It's a lot easier to see this in live market time. Plus today was a weird day because we gapped up so much on news. News is always an X factor, right? But the what's in play, I like this one. So like today, gap size. So immediately I can see what's the gap size today on QQQ. The gap size was 3%. No way we were going to fill that. And you can see gap status not filled, filled time not filled. Give it a second in case any of you all have questions, but in these reports, and here's the thing, let's say like somebody was asking about Tesla in here. Does the gap fill work on Tesla? I don't know, let's see. If I see a gap fill, look, if the gap is small on Tesla, it's gonna fill. Well, look at this. If Tesla gaps up, even though it's a small gap up, it hasn't been filling that gap. That hasn't happened very often lately on Tesla. Let's check by weekday on Tesla. Wednesday, gap ups not filling. That's interesting. Look at that. Gap fill Thursday on Tesla, 70% of the time. Gap down 71% of the time. It's not filled, but it is filled 70% of the time. So if you gap down on Tesla on a Thursday, you're not going to fill it. That's interesting. So there's your example. So you trade NVIDIA. Look at that. NVIDIA Thursdays, completely different than what QQQ and SPY look like. 50-50, 50-50. And you can also go back and add more data and stuff. Interesting. All right, guys, if there's no more questions, I'm going to end it for the night. Make sure you check out Edgeful, edgeful.com. If you haven't tried it out yet, give it a try. What are these indicators, guys? These indicators are huge. I mean, I use IB. Here's the IB indicator. So like my chart looks like this a lot of times. I'm using I like 15-minute a little bit better, but here's your IB this morning. So we took a trade this morning. I was longing on this candle right here because this had a high probability of breaking. I think it was 78%. So we formed, and I did this video the other day. If you're on my YouTube, go find it real fast. It's in the live section. All right, here, just a quick example. This was today's trade. The low formed first. I just went over this in my video on, just go watch my video from, 2 nights ago, I think. Right here is the low of the IB, the first hour. Here was the high. When that happens, the low forms first. It's like 80-something% chance that we're going to break the high. So I'm looking at that, and I know there's a 90-whatever% chance we're going to break at least one side of the orb. So I was able to get here long here in this area for a scalp trade to break the new high of day on NQ. I'll just go down a 3-minute chart and take a look at it. Look at this. So low was formed first, high was formed second. We should break the upside. And I was getting into longs here, and let's see, I think I tried somewhere. I can't remember where I tried it. I think it was right here. I think I was late to it. I know some of the other guys had something to get long off here. I saw this bounce off of pre-market highs, and I think I got in around this area because I was like, I'm just looking for this to happen, And like as soon as it happened, it fell back down. I thought ES was going to do it today too. ES had the same opportunity, but it didn't follow. Hey, and that happens sometimes, right? But if something happens 80% of the time, I'll take that trade 10 times. I'll take my 8 wins. We'll call it a day. All right, guys, I got to get out of here. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully, I can do more of these, the educational side of things, trade review side of things, and obviously just kind of open forum to help and answer questions. I know it's kind of late probably for some of you guys. It's about 8:30 for me. I gotta get some dinner in me. All right, everyone. Appreciate everyone stopping by. If you do like this, give me a follow, like, and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, if you're on X, drop a comment down below or something. Let me know you liked it. Let me know what I can do better, what you'd like to see, and happy to do that. And I appreciate